Hello, hello, my dear audience. This is Kristina, and today is a new episode of KSM Podcast, Going Business On with Kristina. And to be honest, I'm so honored and so excited today to have my special guest speaker from far away from Australia, lady Ashleigh Alsadie. Ashleigh, welcome to the show today.
I am so honored as well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so very much for joining me today. And Ashley, for at the beginning, tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do.
Fantastic. Well, look, I think I always start my introductions off by saying that, many people know me as the cold calling queen. So it's a bit of a self-proclaimed title. I wear that, crown with pride. But yeah, that's what I have been really passionate about over the years. So my background, I'd studied public relations and marketing at university. And then when I actually graduated, it was such a broad, field and range of things that I could get into that when I started working at a marketing firm, it was only because my boss at the time said, we need new leads, we need new clients, can you help me to generate them? I'd asked that question, well, how are we going to do that? And she pointed at the phone and said, start calling local companies to drum up business. And I still remember that first cold call I made, how nervous I was and, not knowing what to say. But quite quickly, I developed a script. I found ways of building rapport. I found there were regular responses that people were giving me. And just that in general, I loved it. I loved the activity, and no one else seemed to. And from there, just noticed that a lot of her clients would come in and say, I need an ash. I need an ash for my business because my pipeline is always empty. I need someone on the phone, directing or kind of creating that direct market intelligence, that direct conversation with my, potential clientele. And that's where it all kind of began, because fast forward to today, I now run a company called the PromoDonna, and we are a team of cold callers that, has called for hundreds of companies all around Australia. So, yeah, that in essence is what I do.
And thank you for sharing that. And when you talk about cold calls, that there are many entrepreneurs who just struggle with that because, in terms when you have just to have courage to pick up the phone and call someone which who you don't know, like, and maybe can you share with us about that? That will be so helpful and useful for our audience because. It's especially when you are new and you just call someone and pick up the phone, or today we have an AI and many ways where we can find some new information, contacts, email addresses, of mobile phones, whatever phones. And can you share with us that approach? Because I think that entrepreneurs aren't stuck when you need to call someone for the first time from nowhere. People don't know you, and you need to go and to have your step forward to connect and build relationship with that potential clients and leads.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you're spot on when you say that, a couple of things I take away from what you were just talking through. The first is yes, I believe that as entrepreneurs, as founders, as business owners, if you're looking to generate new business, I don't think there is any more direct way to generate or create results than by picking up the phone and actually having a conversation with your target market. But it's very easy, I think, as again you pointed out, for entrepreneurs or business owners to kind of hide behind their screens because we have so many other strategies like email marketing, digital marketing, the online world. And don't get me wrong, I still think that the online space and digital marketing is so powerful. But again, generating new leads can be made even more powerful if you actually pick up the phone. So coming back, I guess, to your query around, well, that fear, how can we overcome that fear? Because that's the bottom line. I think a lot of people shy away from actually making cold calls and talking to people because of a number of reasons. I think first and foremost, it's that fear of being like a used car salesman. So almost like that fear of, oh, I'm going to be that stereotypical, seller that creates buyer's remorse. I'm going to be picking up the phone and talking to people and they're not going to want to talk to me. I'm going to get all this rejection. So I think my tip number one to listeners is, you have to go in with that mindset of genuinely helping people. That's sales 101, right? Like if we can shift our mindset to be less about, the reason we're calling, to generate new business, to create results, and make it more about, well, our target market genuinely, has points of pain, has challenges that we can help them with. It definitely transforms the way that you do things because, again, it becomes more of a conversation, a qualification process. And then, yeah, at the end of the day, you're going to be helping people. And the other tip that I would give, so on top of, overcoming that fear by shifting our mindset, the other thing is I find most, entrepreneurs or business owners that are not picking up the phone, it's because they don't know what to say and when to say it. So it's almost like they're flying blindly. They're picking up the phone and going, oh, what do I say? And when do I say this? So my huge top tip here is to actually have a process in mind. And it's something that I use in all of my training when I talk to people is a step-by-step guide, a flow process of, okay, if you've done a great elevator pitch, then you need to ask some great questions. If you've asked some great questions, you might have some objections that arise. So know how to combat those objections, have a closing phrase, so yeah, if you do have that kind of process in place, and I can actually share that with your listeners if they do want a template of sorts, it makes the process so much easier because I find it works time after time. And then you're not nervous about, oh, how can I, control this conversation? What am I going to actually say next?
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that these two tips will so helpful to our audience to get to know more about it. And also they can connect with you. I will put all information later in this show today and this episode. So you just impact me to ask you two questions. One is, do you train either that you have your team and employees who do that for your clients also, but
Yes.
do you train, does your agency train people, and do you have that education and coaching and training how to talk on a phone, by phone
Mm.
about it? And also, do we know who are we going to contact first when we find that information and contact of who are we going to start to talk in that company? Either that is local company or international, however, is global. Because today we can talk on many WhatsApp, Viber, also many softwares which are free of charge like never before. So it's so easy to connect globally with potential clients.
Yes. Yeah. So your first question around training. So the answer is yes. It's something that I definitely do. And, in doing my introduction, it's funny because it's something I often don't really spruik enough, is probably the way to describe it. So, first and foremost, my passion has always been cold calling. And that's what led me to obviously run the PromoDonna, which is a cold calling, lead generation agency. I have a team of 6 professional callers that work with me. And also, I guess listeners might hear that and go, oh, so it's not like a massive call center. And that's a takeaway or just a kind of side note that I'll give, that was always my vision. I didn't want to be running a company that was kind of like your average telemarketing firm that churned and burned through numbers. It was about having a very, highly professional firm, almost like a boutique agency. And that's why it is, myself and 6, highly qualified or highly experienced professional callers. But then I've been running, the PromoDonna for 15 years now, which I still can't believe when I say that. It's going to be 15 years in
Congratulations, in
July.
such a long period of time. So you're so experienced and very professional.
That's right. And isn't it interesting? I'm sure listeners will even, this will resonate with listeners as well, that as a business owner, it's so often, overlooked, or we don't stop to smell the roses because, stats are that usually businesses, fail in the first, 1 to 3 years or something. So to hit that 15-year mark is, such a great achievement. And as you said, I try to use that experience to help others from that training capacity. So, again, full circle back to your question about training, it's something that I really love doing. Over the years, it's evolved as part of my offering. So, people started approaching me saying, you do cold calls, you do them really well. Can you teach me, and my team how to do this more effectively? So there's a range of different, ways that I can work with people. I've trained individuals, even organizations on how to cold call. And we can also do different topics as such, I would describe it as, because, for example, there is your kind of basic cold calling sales approach that we were talking about a little earlier. So, what's a guide? What's a script that people can use that follows a process that can get you results? And so that's one element of the training. But something else that I really love training people on is, and it was something that you touched on, which was, can you train people on how to have conversations? And the answer is yes. And I think the core of that is not just about script work and having a flow or a process. It's that little kind of icing on the cake. It's the rapport building. So one thing that I studied so that I could train people, in an even more advanced way, is I studied neuro linguistics programming. So NLP, which a lot of people might have heard of, it's the study of human behavior and communication models. And what I love about NLP is the rapport building techniques. So things like matching and mirroring and using our internal rep systems to like build rapport with people. So yeah, I love the training side of things, and I'm so honored to have, trained people all around the world on cold calling. So yeah, so that's question one answered, I think.
Yeah, yeah, but it's so I don't know, say it's very as complexing, how I can say it, because it's a lot of things there, as you mentioned NLP. And first and foremost, we have to know how to communicate, what channels to use, like how to approach to potential um, speaker, I mean, some employee in that company. And would you like to share with us who are or which industry, or however, are your clients? When they come to you, and what are their pain points that they want to, either that your agency can do that for them, like and your colleagues.
Yes, great question. And I'll try and tie it back to, because I haven't overlooked the question that you asked about the key people within a company too, the decision makers, because that's a great question that's a bit of a juicy one because it's almost like, how do you get through to the right person? There's layers to that too of how do you get past the gatekeeper and such. So, to describe our ideal clients for the PromoDonna, we have worked with such a wide range of clientele, which I'm really proud of. But I think, at its core, the first thing is we mainly work business to business. So that's something I've been really proud of, even touching on what I said earlier, that we wanted to not be like that average telemarketing firm. And I think a lot of those, the more average ones that churn and burn through numbers, they're targeting consumers, they're targeting people at home or people on their mobile. And I said, no, I want something professional where we're actually generating opportunities for businesses with other businesses. So yeah, all of our clientele, mainly fit that kind of description. But the other thing is I looked at it over the years. I actually did an analysis on, who are our kind of top tier clients or what industries do we tend to attract? And the top three were actually number one, technology. So IT and technology. And listeners may not be surprised at that because tech people and IT people, they're great at what they do, but they're sometimes not, they don't love sales is kind of the way of saying it. So, they'd rather do what they do, facilitate their services, but they come to us because they say, well, Ash, we want to grow and we don't want to pick up the phones. Can you and your team, do that for us? The other two, so the top three were, IT technology. The other one was HR. So we also work with a lot of companies where it's, recruitment or people and performance or training, those kind of HR functions, human resource functions. And last but not least, we also work with a lot of consultants. And, I was going to say like kind of coaching, but then I think to myself, no, there's a lot of consultants in the mix. So it can be anything from business coaches right through to, gosh, we've had companies where they're analyzing the finance of a business. So they're kind of consulting from that financial perspective. So yeah, you can see there's a very wide range. It is always B2B. There's some top industries that we work with. But I think at the end of the day, we also tend to connect a lot with, say, small to medium businesses as well, I would point out, because the key point of pain that everybody has is they want to grow their business. They get so caught up doing their services or facilitating their services that they forget or they leave their pipeline and then they go, oh, I don't know where my next sales lead is coming from. And we're a great alternative to hiring a salesperson. So they might go, oh, we can outsource. We can actually outsource a team of callers and, they can help us to fill our pipeline.
Sounds great. And and when you mentioned those three main IT industry, because we know that software like engineers, they're much more in programming. They don't have time just to pick up the phone, and they don't, just to be honest, and 100% that is true, that they are much more in front of computers, sit down and realize some projects. So they are not willing too much to do that phone calls. I mean, so that's, and as you mentioned, HR, and third one was about and consultants and all.
Consulting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very, very interesting. So yeah, and you can also they can just, as financial companies and consultants. So yeah, that's very interesting. And before you go on that, how you can choose that to go somewhere and find that connection to do cold call? Just it's
Yeah.
very
So
interesting.
it is,
Like
yeah.
as you
And so,
mentioned, I think that you do in global, not just only in training to train
yeah,
how to do cold calls, but also I believe that you have, as you mentioned, that you have clients all around the world. So that
yeah.
how and maybe you can just research something before. your colleagues and your callers start uh, to choose which list of companies will try to call for your client.
Yes, yes. So I understand completely. You're kind of asking that question around, how do you actually start a campaign? What research goes into it, and how do you put together a list of like their ideal clientele? And you're spot on that it does have to be quite, I find, a comprehensive setup phase with each of our clients, because one of the number one questions we are asked, as you can imagine, is how could you possibly call and represent yourself as an IT person when you're not in IT or technology? Because when we do call from the PromoDonna, we are an extension of our client's business. We don't actually mention the PromoDonna, so we almost become a part of their brand, which is another added value because, they've got this extra team member that, is working with them, generating new business. So to that effect, what happens is, when a new client starts with us, and I guess I'll also frame this by saying to listeners, these are some tips I can give you on, even if you're still going to do this yourself, this is probably the process that I would follow to set, up a campaign for yourself. So, step one, when we work with a client, we will do quite a thorough workshop session where I really pick their brain on who they are, what they do. And the main things are things like, what's their unique selling points? What makes them different from their competition? All those key questions we should ask people, because that's what's going to form your script. So if you are going to start, a campaign yourself, again, for listeners, I would be noting down things like that. What is my elevator pitch? What makes me stand out, or what makes me unique and different from my competition? What questions do I want to ask prospects to qualify them out and determine that they need, our help or our services? So they're all the key questions we ask, and then we put together a script, and our client will obviously approve of that script. So they'll be, comfortable with the messaging and whatnot. But then the other element of that setup phase, which you pointed out, which is great, is the collation of the list. Because yes, we are only as good as our data, I like to say, because if we're calling companies that aren't a fit for our client, well, we're not really going to, get very far. We're not going to get the results that, they want us to get. So part of that workshop session is we create almost like a client brief. So, what type of company do you want to work with? What industry are they in? What size of company are they in? So is it, 100 employees or 50 employees, whatever that looks like. And the other thing is, who is the key decision maker? So you pointed this out earlier, Kristina, that, you
Yes, it
kind of
start
asked.
at the beginning of
Exactly.
the
So we're
show
kind of
today.
coming back
Yes,
to
yes,
it.
of course.
And this is a great question of, how do you know who to speak to, or how do you, get into the right person? And it is a bit of an in-depth question, because I guess I'd answer it two ways. The first is, your client or our clients will know generally who they want to speak to. So let's say it's an IT company that we're working with. They might say, well, Ash, we need to speak with IT managers within, companies with 100 plus staff, something like that. But the big but is, we'll source data. So there's like list brokers. There are, great tools like Lucia, which is kind of the LinkedIn, data securing kind of technology. There's all ways and methods that you can produce data. But once we've got the list, we usually find, the team and I, that you do have to investigate who's best once you pick up the phone, because everyone's different. We might call a company and say, hi, I'm calling from XYZ IT company. I'm just wondering if I could speak with Matt, your IT manager. And they might say something like, what's the call regarding? Oh, well, we're an IT service provider and we partner with IT managers. And suddenly they might say, well, it's actually not Matt that you need to speak to. You need to speak to our ICT manager, our technology, whoever it is, right? So I guess it's a tip for everyone listening that, step one, make sure you create yourself a put together list that features not only the company names and the numbers and a name of a decision maker, but also have that mindset that once you pick up the phone, you do have to act like a bit of an investigator to find out who's best, because I think that's a huge part of our role, to do the investigating, do the qualifying, and only then will you actually have, good conversations with the right people.
And as you mentioned, this is such you just need a lot of steps to do and to learn about your clients before, because you're not going to talk about, hi, I'm calling from PromoDonna. You are calling in the name, in behalf of that client. And so that means that it's so complexity, because you have just to ramp up what you said, that your team, that your colleagues, callers, they need to learn about that, and and this is where how you get to know more about different industries. To include in that you can present and represent and go to pick up the phone and call for ideal client of your client.
That's right.
It's very interesting.
You made me think of another great point to give people, though, too, that when you are a cold caller, or, if you're even a listener thinking, well, I really want to set up appointments, this is my main goal. And, again, I could talk about so much when it comes to cold calling, because already my brain's going, oh, we could talk about goal setting, we could talk about targets.
It's long, you have a long experience, long term, so that
there's so many different elements to it. But coming back to, let's say your main goal is to set up appointments with your prospective clients. So, your process might be, you pick up the phone, you determine that the prospect has a need, and then your trial close might be something like, well, look, it sounds like, you have a requirement. What I'd love to do is set up a time so that we can actually meet and I can show you through our solution, whatever it may be. And I guess why I'm bringing this up is, you were talking about, Kristina, the importance of us understanding our client so that we can professionally represent them. And that is true. We need to know enough information to create that appointment. But what I will also add to that is always, I guess I'm saying, we always make sure that our client is seen as the expert and we are simply the introducers or the introductory, part of this relationship, because we would never get on the phone and pretend to be, I guess, knowing everything. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, my main point for listeners here is, I think the aim of a cold call is to, qualify out your prospect, determine that they have a need, but also to cause intrigue. It's almost like you don't want it to be the last conversation you're having with that prospect, if that makes sense. So give away
it makes sense, of course.
give away enough information, but not too much. That's, I think, my whole summary of this point is, generate the interest, but so much that the prospect is almost like, okay, great. Well, what's the next step? How can I learn more? Can you actually meet with me and show me through the solution? Whatever that may be. So I think it's a great tip for people, again, who might be a little fearful around picking up the phone. They might think, oh, I have to sell everything on the call. I have to, make sure I include all information. Get that out of your head, because it's definitely more of an introduction. It's, generating interest, and then, you can take it from there basically as you see fit.
And as you mentioned, we don't need to pick up the phone and connect. We need to build relationship. I think that people you can call one time and again, and go in person to connect with that personality. And yeah, this is, and to be honest, I really I'm learning from you, because I have much now. I have more bigger picture about what is cold calling. So that's for me, and
Mm.
I'm really happy that I can learn more about in this conversation today, because it's so helpful, and you just break through some fear. And I'm thinking, I'm just thinking about myself. So that will be so good for our listeners. I think that they
That's
will connect,
great.
they will think very similar.
I love that. And you're right. I think, cold calling, unfortunately, it has a bit of a bad name, because I think there are a lot of people out there that, maybe they aren't focused on just having genuine conversations and helping people. It is that real blatant sales pitch, where they don't really have a process, and they're not asking you genuine questions and things like that. But yeah, cold calling can be, also the term cold calling can mean so many things. For example, when people inquire with our business, I'll often say, what are you trying to achieve? And once I actually qualify and kind of determine what they're really trying to, generate with their campaign, it might be that they need warm calling, so they've got this old database that they want to bring back to life. Or it might be that they're running an intelligence gathering exercise. So there's so many things. I guess I would say I see cold calling as just simply using the phone to generate great results.
Yes, but what you mentioned, we need to prepare for that, and we need to know how to talk to, and how to, as you said, you build rapport. As you mentioned, that you have there are seven of you, so that's so a lot of quality, not just to pick up the phone and go randomly to call it. So that's when you need to prepare. Those steps are so important before you pick up the phone, when you totally how I can say 100% sure what you do, and then you can go from there. So that's I really, this is the beauty of cold calling. I mean, to prepare for
Exactly.
that.
Definitely. Preparation is everything. And it's interesting that you bring this up, because when I run my training sessions, I actually start off, so this is again some tips for listeners that,
Thank you
um,
for sharing.
yeah,
It's so valuable.
very passionate about. The preparation is everything. And I'll actually break it down that I think, when it comes to cold calling, there's actually two components when it comes to preparation. So the first one is almost what we've touched on so far, getting to know, well, it's actually preparing yourself, with a script, with an approach. But the tip that I will give within this component is, don't ever forget the what's in it for them. And what I mean by this is, so many of our clients, when I say, tell me about who you are and what you do, they'll reel off all this information about, oh, we're an IT company, we're fantastic, we've been running for 10 years, da 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 da. Stop them and I'll say, yes, but why do your clients use you? How do you help them? What's in it for them? And it really changes the conversation, because they might say, oh, well, we have all these unique, propositions for our clients that we work with. This is how we're different from our competition. Because at the end of the day, for listeners, that's what prospects want to hear. They want to hear how you're going to help them. If you fail to acknowledge that on a call, that's why you won't get the results that you want. So, prepare yourself, develop the script, but don't ever forget that element of, again, what's in it for them. And then the second component of preparation, so we've talked about, preparing yourself with a script. The other element is your mindset. And I get really excited about this stuff because I think when it comes to sales, when it comes to cold calling, if you can't master your mindset, you won't get the results that you want. And there's a few ways in which I, help my team and I help people to master their mindset. So the first is goal setting. So that seems like common sense, but a lot of people don't do it. So I will, if I'm going to do some cold calling, I will write down on a piece of paper, I generated, 3 appointments for XYZ client, and I write 1, 2, 3 down the page. And it's almost like I don't want to say manifesting, but my mind is suddenly focused on the 3 results that it thinks it's already created. So it makes the calling process a lot easier to know that eventually I'm going to get, 3 appointments. So, goal setting is key. The other side of it is, just being aware of the state you're in or the energy that you're giving off. Because I'll always tell this, very short story when I'm in training, that one morning, and I was working as a cold caller at the time, before I was running my business, I had this terrible morning where everything went wrong. So I think my car got bogged. I spilt coffee down my top. Everything was going wrong. I was running late. And I thought to myself, look, I'm just going to forget that. I'm going to get into the office and pick up the phone. But the first call that I made, that I reached a decision maker, they said, oh, I wouldn't buy from you. You don't sound passionate. You don't sound like you even want to be at work. It was terrible feedback. And I thought, what's happened here? Like, I've gone from creating great results to, this negative feedback. And I really believe that it was as a result of all that had happened in the morning. So if my team, are ever in a state where they're not creating results or they're in a negative mindset, I'll say, go for a walk, listen to some great music, do some meditation, whatever it might be to get into that good mindset, because only then will you give off great energy and, create the results that you
When
want.
you have
So,
positive energy, or if you are in a bad mood, just don't do that. Just relax
yes,
and do it next day. I mean,
100%.
if you
Or
cannot do
like,
it, if you have headache or you're in negative mood or whatever, as you said, because this is your energy. We are a giver and receiver of energy, and people
oh,
feel that. So that's,
great.
if you're not in a good mood, don't do it. It's better to relax, to do meditation, to relax yourself. And this is the because people love to be so how I can say it, that people feel your energy, a positive energy, that you're so approachable, a very kind person. This is so important.
Oh, it's so important, and it's everything. Like, I think, my team and I can never create results, as you're saying, if we are, in that kind of negative mindset. And we have our days. Like, unfortunately, I had a day the other day where, I think all round I'm usually a pretty positive person, but for whatever reason, I had this morning where things, hadn't gone as planned. And just as you said, I took the time out. I did like half an hour of meditation. I went for a run because I knew that I needed to like move my body. And I was only able to come back and do some work later that day, after I'd kind of shifted out of that funk, I'd like to call it.
Yeah, we're human beings, so that's sometimes have a bad day and have many problems, family issues, whatever we have. And then tomorrow maybe we're not willing to be so in positive mood, but we need to
Yes.
relax and take break, take day
Yeah,
off and move forward. It's yeah,
that's
that's
right.
this is so important. I mean, like in every business, like whatever, like in a family with kids, with our pets, whatever we do, that's this is so important,
It's interesting you say that about pets too, because another thing that I tell people in training when I'm talking about how our energy kind of feeds through to other people, I actually was honoured to train. We've got an organisation here in Australia called Vision Australia. So it's for people that are blind, and they actually had cold callers. So they were blind, cold callers. And when I told the story about the energy and that morning where everything went wrong, and then I picked up the phone and had that negative experience, one of the blind callers was like, well, because she had her guide dog with her. And she said to me, it's like when I am sad, my energy feeds down the lead to my dog. My dog feels my energy. And she said, so I think it's very true of that being that way with the phone. When we're on the phone, our energy almost feeds down the cord of the phone. And I went, oh, I love that analogy. We're all very connected. As you said, we're all, energy is everything.
It's very interesting. Or when we have some pain, for example, people who have a cat
Yes.
will come exactly where is your pain, or
Yeah,
and sit there. That's
exactly.
it, and healing that place on your
That's
body.
right. Oh, I'm a big believer in all this. We could talk for hours about energy, I
Yeah,
think.
it's very interesting, and I really appreciate, that's such an amazing topic, because I have never had a guest speaker who talk about cold calls, and today I think that our audience will have such a great and big opportunity to learn in some way, and that in this on my podcast in episodes, my guest speakers just talk about their background, who they are, what they do, but also sometimes we do like a master class, because that's something from their experience, from their industry, as you're talking today. And I really appreciate, and I'm honored to have you today, just like to talk about this amazing topic, which is so helpful to people, how to approach and build their business to business,
Yeah.
and get more income and more results, of course, if they break through barriers and pick up the phone. But they need to know, and also just don't forget to connect with Ashleigh, because she's so professional and experienced, and business owner, I know how to say, and consultant, and she can help you a
Yeah.
lot if you're in fear to do cold calling.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. And look, I'm such a big believer, as much as it's very similar to what I kind of was teaching everyone earlier about, with your script and, kind of making it about you. I mean, I, of course, can talk about myself and the PromoDonna and what I do, but I'm such a big believer in giving back and sharing your knowledge, kind of using platforms like this for education. So, I guess what I'm saying to listeners is yes, if you have any questions about cold calling or your sales approach, or, I'm so passionate about helping others, especially when it comes to growing your business. I quite often run like a consultation session for free, just to help people, to see where they're at and what their approach is like and whether they do need our help. Because sometimes people have it all in order. It's just about taking that leap of faith and picking up the phones. Sometimes
So
you just
you're
have to do
present
it.
on many, I don't know, just but about, because you work global, on in LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook,
Yes,
audience
yes,
can find you, and I will
yes.
put all links as
Find me
well, and
everywhere.
your website, of course. I will put all those information in
Yes,
below this
definitely.
episode, so that people can also connect with you if they have some kind of question and pain
Yes,
point.
and actually, I would love to say on the social media front. So yes, definitely, you can either come and find me on our websites. I've got the PromoDonna website, which I know you'll probably share. I've got also the ashleighsalsadie.com website, which is more about training. So if training and coaching is kind of more of what you need, that's there. But yes, on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. I quite often share a lot of what I like to think of is fun content because, just as a kind of side story for everyone, years ago, I stumbled across TikTok. Like I was saying to my husband, oh, this platform, all these young kids are kind of dancing on it and using it. But I quickly found that, there were ways that I could deliver sales theory or sales content in a fun way. So I do a lot of like voiceovers, or I do, kind of fun or funny satirical things about sales. And it's really connected with people over the years because, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, for example, LinkedIn, you can see the same stuff over and over again, and it gets a little bit boring. So I really made it a mission of mine to, again, deliver something that was a little different and a bit more fun. So if you are looking for those regular tips and tricks, definitely follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram, and you'll see that there.
Don't forget to follow. So, and you can also find something like a workbook or ebook, which you can share with. I can share a link, or audience can find that on your website. So that's on
Definitely.
PromoDonna.
Yeah. Even, as I mentioned earlier, there's like a lot of templates and such that I've got. Um, for example, if you're looking to develop the script because, you want to pick up the phone, but you're just not sure the flow of, what to say and when to say it, I've got those types of templates that might really help people. And it seems basic, but again, it's so overlooked. And I think that's where the call hesitancy comes in. So, happy to share that if it makes people, more comfortable.
Thank you for sharing that. But today, as a digital space, as a digital marketing and technology, and as you in Europe, Australia, thankful to that beauty of in a way that we can work together, collaborate like with clients all around the world. Uh, I know that you're so in a way about AI. And today,
Mm.
maybe we can touch that as a touching point in terms, will AI replace cold callers? I would love Ashley to share with us about that and why human to human connection is more valuable than ever and something like that. So that will be some kind of very teaching part today, masterclass about AI in terms of cold calling and human to human connection. And however,
Yes.
your experience
My
with that.
Yeah, and my eyes kind of lit up when you when you asked this question.
You,
I
you
love
have
it.
a lot to share, but
Yes, I
you will be
love
again guest speaker, no worries about it. So
yeah.
we will
Well,
have
I
a lot
love
to
this
talk
topic.
about.
Yeah, I love this topic. And I'll actually start off my answer around, AI by actually kind of talking through what I've experienced over the years. So obviously I've been, running the PromoDonna now for, nearly 15 years, 15 years in July. And we've seen a lot of, I would say ebbs and flows or different cyclical times where people have argued that point of, cold calling is dead, or you're going to get replaced. And the first time that we saw it was with the digital space, right? So when I started my company in 2011, cold calling was utilized by so many people, and that was fantastic. I was really passionate about helping them. And then we saw the online world really start to grow a lot more. So a lot more digital companies into, coming into the space, a lot more Facebook advertising, all that type of, marketing and advertising. And so there was a big debate happening, which was, cold calling's dead. You're going to get replaced by, the digital space. But what I found really interesting was that during that period, we became cold callers, that is, probably more important than ever because people were still craving that human to human connection. So again, as I was saying earlier, I think, the digital world, the digital space is so powerful, but sometimes the missing element is someone picking up the phone and speaking to you. So we look at examples like, LinkedIn. If you get a message from someone, pitching their services, we usually see that message. And even if it does spark our interest, we forget about it because they don't pick up the phone and call us. Or, the amount of times I've had digital agencies reach out to me and say, Ash, can you and your team help us? Because we're creating all these leads for our clients, and then our clients don't get in contact with them because they don't want to pick up the phone. So that was kind of cycle one, was the digital world started this conversation of, will cold calling be replaced? And the answer is I don't think it will ever in that space, because you still need, that human to human connection. And the reason I tell that part is because I think the same thing's happening with AI. So AI, started to really peak, it's evolving as we speak. And it is very powerful. We utilize AI sometimes in certain things that we do for our campaigns, never from a call perspective, but, maybe AI might help us to strategize about a campaign or, with some approach techniques or something. However, I think, again, we will never get replaced because that human to human element will always be needed. And what I've seen is the PromoDonna has actually got even more business because of AI, because I have clients call me and say, I've used an AI cold calling company before and they were terrible, or it sounds like a robot, or, people know that they're not, that haven't got that human element. So my hope is that we'll never get replaced. I mean, people might argue that AI will evolve and will become almost human-like in the future. I guess we'll see what happens at that point. But right now, I think, yes, cold calling, picking up the phone is more important than ever. And your prospects, your clients want that from you. So for listeners, kind of listening in going, oh, yeah, can I, just contact people digitally, or can I contact them with AI? My reinforcement would be your clients want to hear from you. So pick up that phone. It's so important right now.
And when you mention AI, I always wanted to share with guest speakers, and they know about it. AI is a tool which is so helpful in terms, as you mentioned, to create some template or to create something to help you to do faster something. But to the end of the day, human to human is so important, whatever we do, and we need to use our brain. Either that we
Yes.
have something like to put as a tool, but AI sometimes can give such a good punctual data,
Yes.
sometimes not, depends what you
Yes.
are prompting, what is your prompt. But also, I mean that, as you mentioned, if we talk about we're talking about cold calling, your client, your prospects need you, and one wants to hear your voice, just
Yes.
to know that someone is a human in front of, to the other side of
That's exactly
calling.
right. And I think, what came to mind, through you saying that as well, was that I guess for listeners to know that this is a way for you to also stay ahead of your competition, because you're spot on that I think AI, unfortunately, as much as it is helpful, is making people a little, dare I say, lazy. So they kind of go, oh, I can use AI to create things and all of that. So if you are staying at the forefront of your competition, you're staying at the forefront by actually picking up the phone and harnessing, your skill set, or sharpening your skill set around sales and cold calling, you're actually going to be ahead of your competition, because that's actually what I saw, coming back to what I was saying earlier about the digital space. It was the same thing, that the companies that still picked up the phone and contacted their prospects or their clients were creating a lot more sales, because their competition was perhaps just relying on digital and kind of hiding behind their screens. Whereas, yes, those that utilize the phone were definitely ahead of the game. So I think it's going to be the same with AI. And that would be my tip, is even if you can harness AI, stay ahead of the competition by still using the phone in the mix.
Yes, but use before you using the phone, you can research and you can use AI to help you to get more data.
Definitely. That's a great point. That yes, if listeners were kind of sitting there going, yes, well, Ash has motivated me or inspired me to pick up the phone. I'd love to run a new campaign. Um, you're spot on that AI could be that solution that would, motivate them even more by, putting in some prompts to say, look, I'm thinking of running a cold calling campaign. I want to target XYZ type clients. How would you suggest I set this up? What do you think my script should be like? Or where would I get the data for this type of clientele? And yeah, look into it. And then I think, once you've got all of that in place, it's about picking up the phone, testing out their approach. Because I'd also give that as a bit of a tip. Don't be purely reliant on what AI says is a great approach, because as I said earlier, we will sometimes use AI to support us with campaigns, but at the end of the day, it's AI. It is, kind of robotic. And if it gives us a script of sorts, we need to add that human element. So it's got to be a much more conversational type style. And you'll only be able to determine what works and what doesn't by picking up the phone. So yeah, use it to test and measure what works.
Yeah, but as a AI can, as you mentioned, can help you also to give you ideas sometimes. Either
Yeah.
depends how do you ask for, in which you use it. Is it for free of charge or upgraded, or there are different softwares of automation that you can use
Yes.
it, and specifically for different type of industries also. So this is so this is like variety of strategies for that. So which you
Yes.
can use it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
And was
cold
there
call is
another
cold
question?
call, cold call
Yeah.
by human.
Yes. And so your questions, you had asked me, yeah, AI, will we be replaced? Was there another question, or did I kind of answer it in a roundabout way?
Yeah, and it was like how is AI changing the role of cold callers
Mm.
today, for example? What do you think?
Yeah. And I think we kind of touched on that. I think it
Yeah, we
was,
touched, but just like to have
yeah,
your
I'll add a little bit, I'll add something extra that, yeah, we kind of talked about how AI probably has changed things in a great way, because we can strategize or, kind of develop campaigns and approaches, in conjunction with it, or, kind of collaborating with AI. The other thing is, I have always been a believer in seeing the opportunity in everything. Maybe that is another reason why the PromoDonna has lasted, as long as it has. So I never like to see AI as competition either. I think there would be people out there that would go, oh, again, you'll be replaced and you shouldn't use AI. The outlook I have is, well, look, if we are cold calling for, B2B quite high quality, high end, service delivery, AI could also be used for, I guess, how do I describe it? Kind of lower end campaigns. So, as an example, I was talking to a business owner not that long ago who actually works in the tech space. He's produced an AI, almost like a virtual receptionist for businesses. And we were talking about AI and how my company could utilize it. And he said, well, look, if you've got a client that has like tens of thousands of companies that it needs to call, so a list of like 10,000 companies, that would take us as human beings a long time to call because we don't churn and burn through numbers. It might take us months, if not years, to call all those types of, leads and companies. But he said AI could actually call that in a matter of weeks or something. And then you could get the most qualified leads and contact them and create opportunities. So I guess that's what I would say is, how is AI going to change the landscape or the world for cold callers? I would probably see in the future us working or collaborating with AI to make even bigger or more powerful campaigns for our clients, definitely.
Yeah, as you mentioned that, that nowadays that also there are companies who just go there and do automation also like
Mm,
about email marketing to answer an email or just to do like a chatbots or like a automated outreach or however
yes,
that's what we live today, like that we are so like I can say that that's this is our time, I mean, so without that
yes,
we cannot say that this is our reality, so that's
yeah,
and I have still two questions for you today.
yes,
It's such a great experience and really amazing interview today. Why is
great.
maybe we still you answer in this question, but I can just ask. We can see that we talk about it also. Why is the human to human communication still important in lead
Mm,
generation? Maybe we answered
mm.
that, but by the way, we you can share with us a little bit and
Yeah, no, great question. And I think, as you said, we've kind of touched on it, I think, in certain parts of our conversation today. But I think I actually would almost bring it back to, when I talked about the training component that I deliver, and I said, it's really great to have a sales process or a script that, you have in place. But the icing on the cake, the thing that will get you results is always that rapport building element. And I think that that's where that human to human contact will always be required. So, for example, you can have an AI cold caller that has a really great approach and has a really well worded script, but I don't think they will ever, this is just my thought, I don't think they'll ever have that human intuition of sorts or that intuitive approach and that ability to kind of read emotions in the way that we do. So, for example, when I teach my NLP, like rapport building techniques, there are certain things like, matching and mirroring. So, when I call someone, if that, let's say I get through to a man and he's very slow and speaks very low, it's almost like I start to mimic that. I don't want to make it too obvious, but I slow down my pace and my tone changes. And the same with if I got a woman who is very, very high pitched and talk very, it's almost like you have to match and mirror. And the reason, if listeners are thinking, oh, why would you do that? NLP, a strong belief in the NLP world is like attracts like. Our prospects want to feel, or the way that you build a connection with a prospect is if they think that you are like them. So, and that's why rapport happens when you meet someone for the first time and you go, oh, I feel like I've known this person for years It's actually because you see parts of yourself in them. So, yeah, again, like attracts like. So, they're really kind of in depth, I think, psychological things that, drive human beings. Does AI have that capability? I don't think it does yet. I'm yet to be proven wrong, but that's again, my way of answering.
And this is what you said. We cannot work with everyone, especially that we
Yes,
can reflect our energy and be the same frequency that we like someone, build
yeah,
rapport, and also build long-term relationship.
yes,
This is a
yes.
relationship between human and
That's
human.
very
So,
true. I mean, this is it's another element of the conversation, isn't it, too? That, I mean, we're kind of talking about, when prospects are a suitable fit for our business. But I think this really ties in with, and I hadn't really thought of it this way, but that's another great point of why AI, we need that human to human connection. Because I think as human beings and as salespeople, we also get a feel for whether a client is going to be suitable for us. Because if luckily, if you're in a good position in business enough to say, no, I don't think that person's going to be a fit for us. Sometimes when I say no, and it is rare, but sometimes people come along that are prospective clients and you just go, I don't think they're going to be a fit for us. I think a lot of that is intuitive. It's almost like a feeling, oh, I don't think they're really a fit for us. Whereas I don't think AI would have that capability. It would be like, oh, they tick the boxes. Yes, we'll work together. And then the writing might be on the wall that down the track, they weren't a fit. So yeah, that's another, way you could look at
and
why.
AI doesn't have body, so
Yeah, exactly.
and don't and doesn't feel.
Yes. Not yet. I think I've watched those sci-fi movies and I go, maybe we're headed towards that at some point, but not yet.
Yeah, it's very very interesting talking to you. I can talk with you maybe 3 hours, but we'll put that for the new episode. I mean, so it's very very interesting,
I would be
and
happy to come back.
yeah, you will come back this year. Why not? And what balance should business find between AI tools and human outreach?
Great question. I mean, look, I almost, put it back to the question of if someone was to also say, how much digital marketing should I do in comparison to how much cold calling should I do? So I think, I'd probably answer it in several ways. Number one, this also comes back to your goals and targets and who you're looking to work with. So, if it was me, if I was, planning a new strategy for 2026 for my business, and I said to myself, okay, well, we want 20 new clients and I want them to be in the IT space, I'd kind of do that assessment, right, on my ideal clients. Where do they hang out? Are they mainly online? Is it better, will I gain more traction getting through to them via the phone? Is there some element, in an AI way that I could reach them? So I guess what I'm saying to listeners is, as a percentage of how much would I utilize AI and how much would I cold call? And it does come back to your ideal client target market. So know who that is, break down the channels in which or the platforms where you'll find them. And then I think that will give you your answer of, what strategies are going to be utilized and how much activity. I think that's the key word, is how much activity would you deliver towards them. And that's, to let people know, that's kind of how I work out how we'll work with our clients, because I will say to people, okay, great. You want to work with us. You want to target, these types of clients or companies. How many results do you want? What kind of sales outcomes do you want to achieve? And if they say to me, well, look, Ash, we would just really love to get introduced and in the door with 2 highly qualified companies each week, then I will look at, okay, well, how many cold calls do I have to make to get there? So it's a real numbers game. And I think that's how I'd answer your question, is saying, know who your clients are, know what space they play in, know what kind of strategies that might resonate with them to create results, and then break it down when it comes to your targets. How much activity would you have to deliver to achieve those outcomes?
And what you mentioned before today, is that when you ask them, your clients, they don't know how to prepare that. Just if you ask them, yeah, we're such a good company, we need, in that we are very, let's say famous, but people know but they need to get to describe that in front of clients, so that your company, the agency, can do that. Like that's he can do for your clients about it. So that's people need to get, but to be very, very simple. For example, I when I start like my KSM brand business online with like coaching and podcasting and speaking, and when you put many things there, but I get from my coach, and he said like I help business owners as you are to get to be more visible using variety of strategies. This is what I do.
Yes.
In terms of coaching, it's like one sentence, not just and this is so simple.
Yes.
And people can say, okay, right. I wanted to see, this is my pain points. What is, let's, for example, like that you wanted to introduce yourself, but this is because people need to have, they need to have more clarity about it, and to be, depends which company is about to try to introduce themselves and attract new clients.
Yes. And I think, what we're kind of diving into, which is so crucial, again, I can provide more tips for everyone around this, is, yes, when we talked earlier about the what's in it for them, that becomes a crucial part or an integral part of your elevator pitch. So that, sales introduction, which is the start of every cold call, right? But it is definitely an art form. So, for listeners, if you, are working on, your preparation, you're putting together information on, the what's in it for them, what's your differentiators, what makes you unique, and then you're putting together your elevator pitch for the start of your script. It needs to be a sentence or two. So just like you said, it can't be this long-winded spiel, because often clients give me this very long-winded spiel.
Just that your clients don't be confused.
Yes, and you lose, you know what, I'll give people my top sales tip today, right? So if your listeners take nothing away from this podcast other than this tip, I'll be very happy. So this is my top tip. Someone told me very early on in my sales career, the person who talks the most is losing the sale, right? And I kind of went, oh, that's interesting, because a lot of people think they need to talk and talk and talk and waffle on and bombard people with information, when it's actually the opposite that is true. So when you're putting together that elevator pitch, you can see why that, having a sentence or two is key. And then it's your role to just ask great questions. So, when it comes to that elevator pitch, my advice for everyone is, come up with a sentence or two, try to make it unique and different and, about them, how you're going to help them, and then go and test it out. There's so many networking events, there's so many online forums, things like that you can test it out just to see what resonates, because it's definitely, as I said earlier, an art form, but one that you can master if you practice and test and measure.
Yeah, and that will be some kind of message for audience. Just be so, create your short sentence, one or two. Don't be that your client will, that you can confuse your potential client. So that's,
Exactly. And not only confusion, it's, people don't listen for long anymore. We've got short attention spans. So if you don't capture them quickly, that's where they'll hang up the phone. They'll be like, oh no, I'm not interested. So if you can get something, that kind of hooks them in, that's only about a sentence or two, yeah, that's where the magic happens, I think.
yeah, and don't forget to connect with Ashleigh. And if you have a fear of cold calling, don't forget to connect with Ashleigh, and I will connect with her definitely because she's amazing and she does such amazing job, very professional, very experienced. Dear Ashleigh, thank you so very much for joining today's episode, today's show. I'm so honored to have you, and I would like to have you again this year on my podcast to talk on specific topics because you have a lot to share, and we can learn a lot from you,
I
and to
love
do so
that.
amazing breakthrough in our
Oh,
career.
look, it's been my absolute pleasure. And I'd love to come back because I think, as I said, there's, so many different layers to cold calling. There's so much to talk about. When people, yeah, do think it's very simple and straightforward, there's, certain things you can implement that makes it easier. There's so many different topics people struggle with. So, even if I come back, we might be able to cover, what is a great sales process to follow when you're on the phone or something like that.
Yeah,
Whatever's
and
going to
maybe you can
help.
just do how to do it, just to introduce that. And also,
Yes.
by the way, I wanted to share with our audience when we started today show that we met each other maybe more. It was more than 8 years, maybe
Yes.
10. So just imagine what is a long-term journey to different continents. I want in Europe, you want the side of the world, you're in Australia, and what is the
Yes.
beauty of digital space? To connect with
Well, it's
amazing and very, very professional people as you are. And I really appreciate your time today. And I'm really honored, to be honest, to be with you today and
oh,
with
that's
my
lovely.
audience.
Well, vice versa. And I think, yeah, for listeners, I completely agree. How fantastic it is to live in a world where we can stay connected with people for that long. And you know what else, Kristina? I think it's a reinforcement to everyone listening that, because we know this happens, right, with clients, where, our topic today is very much about sales, and not to be disheartened when, maybe, for example, you make a cold call or you make a sales pitch and you think it went really well, and then you kind of hear crickets, but you're still connected with that person. It might come to fruition in 10 years' time. So, stay confident, believe in what you're doing, and
And never give up.
never give up. That is the
Be
key message.
persistent, be consistent, be successful. Successful.
Oh, I
Thank
love
you
it.
again and see you very soon. Thank you so very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye for now.
See ya.
See you.
Oh, my. God.